Good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
Good evening. It's Sunday the 31st of January 2016. We have a packed show, again, loads of information to talk about, things that happened during the week and things we're going to be catching up on. So without any delay, we're going to get in and find out what the communication channels are, and then we'll crack on from there. Steve.
Okay, communication channels this evening are as follows.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
046 927 1212 is the phone number for the studio this evening. If you're going to call in from outside of the Republic of Ireland, the number will be 00353 469 271212. We also have on the website, that is oymradio.com, we have the virtual, no, it's not virtual. We have the chat room. It's a real chat room with real people. We have that on there as well. If you want to log in there, you can ask questions and you can chat away to the friendly bunch of people who live there every Sunday, and a big hi from us all here. We also monitor People's Internet Radio, the chat room on there as well. That is peoplesinternetradio.com. A big hi to everyone in there, an equally friendly bunch of people. What else we got? We have Facebook on the website there, the old anti-social media. You can check us out there, see what we're up to. We also have the link on the website there for the YouTube channel as well. And if you want to check us out on iPhone or smartphone or any of those devices, we have the TuneIn Radio Link app that is on the link there is on the website as well. So just pop the link on your device and search for OYM Radio. All bases covered.
Brilliant stuff. What a week. Loads of things going on. Anyway, we have two guests on the show tonight. One is Richard Cranor, and the other guest later on is Joe Puente. And we'll be speaking to Richard in a few minutes, but as usual, we have a few things to announce and a few things to talk about, things that went on during the week. The one thing we don't have on the list, I'll quickly mention, I'm sure you all heard, that Terry Wogan, the broadcaster, born in Limerick and then went off to the UK and made a career over there in broadcasting, died at the age of 77 to cancer. So, sorry to hear that. You know, it's always bad news, bad when you hear people like that, especially when your own dying. And, again, we mentioned about all these kind of deaths that have been going on since Christmas and January, and so many people that we know that have been dying. It's just unbelievable.
But I think when you say that we know, I mean, we're talking about public figures, and especially musicians, a lot of musicians. Yeah. I think somebody said on the chat room there last week that in 2015 alone, something like 50 separate musicians died.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of people.
But yeah, I mean, even Terry Wogan, he was a great guy. I used to love some of the shows that he was on, especially, I think he was a pioneer well, he wasn't a pioneer, but he was definitely the early versions of Blankety Blank. Do you remember that one?
Well, Blankety Blank, years ago.
I used to love that.
Yeah, it's a bit of humour, yeah. It was a bit funny, so, best regards to his family, condolences and all that kind of stuff. So, you're going to tell us about the Pain Genie?
Yes, as I mentioned there last week, the Pain Genie, they're going to be doing another seminar. That's Richard Cumbers, another Pain Genie training course in energy medicine with Cranor and breathing techniques for longevity and health. That's going to take place in Inch Beach in County Kerry. I don't think it's actually on the beach. You never know, it might be. It's going to be the weekend of the 20th and 21st of February 2016. The link, as per usual, I will post up on the website if anyone is interested in going along for 2 days of intense training on the Pain Genie. It's well worth going. Hopefully myself and Alan will be there, so it's definitely something to look forward to anyway. So I will pop the link up on the website there just in case anyone is interested and wants to pop along and get some training.
Brilliant. And there's going to be a few interesting people there, we've been told. So we're going to bring down our new recording equipment donated by the OYM listeners. Thank you very much for that.
And thanks for all the cassette tapes that go along with it.
God, it's not that old. But again, a big thank you. This is why, we ask people to donate. If you can, afford a couple of quid, it's much appreciated, because there's equipment that we want to get. One of them is recording equipment so we can go down and do remote interviews, and this is going to be one of the occasions where we're going to do this, and we're hopefully going to be able to do more of this as time goes on. So that's the plan there. The other message we have in from James Gilliland from the ESETI Ranch in the States. He said hello to everybody, that he's asking people if they can help spread the word about their GoFundMe campaign to assist with repairs from storm damage. The link is gofundme.com/ECETI, ECETI-repairs. ECETI will be open on time this spring, but we're reaching out to the community for help with funding and for the repairs that need to be done. Thank you and namaste. So, just to let you know, if you want to donate to James's GoFundMe to help with the storm damage over there, you can go to that website there and you'll be able to fund. Steve?
That is GoFundMe.
GoFundMe, did I not say?
You did. It's just the way you said it so quick, you know. I'm just saying.
Okay, GoFundMe.
Anyway, Niall Boylan, he's a mainstream media DJ on one of the mainstream stations here. Classic Hits. Sorry, I didn't know what it was. Classic. I don't listen to the radio. But seemingly Niall Boylan, he interviewed Mr. Ben Gilroy. Anyone in Ireland will know Ben Gilroy and the Trojan work that he's been doing for the past couple of years. Anyway, he was interviewed by this chap, Mr. Boylan, and as it says here, never argue with an ignorant person. You will lose every time. What's it? They'll beat you with something and drag you down to their level. I can't remember the exact
They'll
saying.
beat you with their ignorance.
With their ignorance, yeah. But this guy knows nothing about mortgages and the law, but his arrogance holds no bounds. He won't let Ben finish his point over and over again. Now, I didn't actually hear the thing myself, but Alan heard it and my wife heard it as well. And, you know, it's just, again, it's more proof that they can't ignore Ben and people like Ben, like the Hub and places like that. They can't ignore these people because they're making such an impact. So they have to have the likes of Ben on, because if not, their listeners are going to be going, well, why didn't you have him on? He seems to know a lot. So they obviously have him on, and then they berate them with, you know, all this crap, and again, they don't let them finish their points, and they just try and make little of them. But fair play, I believe Ben got his point across anyway, and came across very well, so kudos, Ben Gilroy.
I would just say to people, look, if the people don't understand how the system works, there's no point arguing with somebody who doesn't know how the system works, because you won't win, because they just don't get it. And this Neil Boylan, obviously, a very arrogant chap by the sound of it, from what you heard from the interview, just didn't know the system. He didn't know how the system worked, and yet he was trying to challenge Ben on it. And they only had like 10 minutes or so for the interview, so how are you going to explain fractional reserve banking and the banking system in 10 minutes? So unbelievable. Fair play to Ben. He stood his corner and he had a good go, which is exactly the best way to approach it. Now, we were talking about the high street stores, and again, we have down here as a report, high street on the UK are becoming more bereft of electronic retailers day by day, it seems, and now Dixon's Carphone is set to make that decline even more apparent. By closing as many as 134 of its outlets around the country, the plan is to begin merging the company's various shops together in order to create more versatile and product-diverse stores, selling everything from PCs to phones in one place. Now, I know Amazon is a big competitor, but, online shopping, but we still need our retail stores. And I'm saying it was announced today, the 27th of the 1st, in the High Court, that Extravision, Ireland's longest-standing movie rental chain, is to cease trading today with the closure of 80 stores and the loss of 580 jobs. And now, we did mention Extravision last week, so Enda Kenny and his cronies were all talking about the recovery in Ireland. And there is another shop, which I'll just mention now, I have on the list here, Boylan Store. Boylan Store, department store, which is, is 100 years old, I believe. It's closing its doors as well, with over 83 jobs going. I mean, so much for recovery, but we'll talk about that later. Yeah,
and also in not too far away from us here, one of the stores at Boy County Meath, McElhinney's, that was again, receivers were sent in there a couple of weeks ago. The family who own that they're doing their damnedest. They did have 3 stores. They got rid of 2 of them so they could try and keep the third one open. And again, there's just more issues there. Receivers getting sent in. And I believe, from what I heard there just recently, that the people who were kind of doing the protest, about 40 people, they were trying to help the family out, and it seems that it was all in vain now, because it was up again in the courts, and a judge has said that the original ruling still stands, and he basically said that the store is to be handed over to the receivers. I think it's on the 5th of February. So a bit of bad news there. Another store gone to the wall. And I also seen on anti-social media there was a village, I'm not sure exactly where it was, I think it was Galway, but they showed some shopping precinct in Galway where a couple of years ago, there was the image showed maybe about 10 or 15 shops in this little precinct, and they said a couple of years ago, it was a thriving little place, everybody went there, and great for tourists, etc., but all the shops are closed now. So, the government have a lot to answer for.
They do, but you're going to read out a bit of... this is news just in, by the way. I don't think this has been mentioned. We have posted up the full article on Facebook, so if you go up to our Open Your Mind Radio Facebook page, you'll actually see the full article and the video. But Steve, just you have a portion of the information there.
Yes, I do, and this is news from Guy Taylor, and thanks to Ray for this information. Today we have had the fantastic news that our friend Russ McGarry had an amazing news in the fight regarding his unlawful eviction last year. It says we'll attach the video, but be warned, it is upsetting for some people.
That's on their Facebook page.
So the link's on the Facebook page. Yeah. Goes on to say, today all police officers involved have been found guilty by the Professional Standards Branch of Investigation and the Civil Litigation Department of 7 courts of misconduct in office.
7 counts.
7 counts. Sorry, I do apologise. Each and every officer will now have a personal private prosecution taken out against them. This is awesome news. These officers were fully aware at the time of what they were doing and are now being held to account. This is an example of what we are saying when we say that police officers should not be getting involved with evictions. They are blindly following along with bailiffs, in this case violently removing people from their homes, putting people out onto the street, when the owners can prove they own the property lawfully and are in fact a victim of fraud and after theft.
So that's brilliant news. So that means that obviously if that's happening in the UK, and that has happened now that these 7 officers are going to be brought to account for what they're doing, well then that means that should apply over here in Ireland. And we do need the Gardaí. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't, but they should be doing their job, and helping bailiffs evict people from homes is not their job.
So when they say in future, well, I'm just doing my job, that's not going to hold water anymore.
That's not going to hold water anymore, because they're not doing their job. And this is what we're saying, and this is what Guy Taylor is saying. Now, if you want to see the whole article, if you want to read the whole article and see the video, pop over to our Facebook page, and you'll actually see the article there and the video as well. And it reads out the 7 counts what they're going to be prosecuted on, private prosecutions. And I think that's something that we should be doing over here for Gardaí who are getting involved in evictions. They should be concentrating on crime and not getting involved in civil matters. Right, how's your week, Steve? Yeah,
my week's been good. The usual mix of office politics, and as I just mentioned before we came on live that I was having a conversation with one of the ladies in work during the week, and anyone who's been following the news will have heard about these I'm going to call them the killer mosquitoes that are on the loose coming to a town near you in 2016. Well, anyway, I had a conversation with a lady in work, and she's old enough to know better, but she's 52 years of age, and we just had this conversation in relation to these mosquitoes, and she was saying how terrible it was, and I said, it's obviously part of a depopulation program, and she nearly lost the will to live at that point in time. Her voice went up, I think, two octaves, and her hands and arms became very animated. But yeah, I was called a couple of conspiratorial names and blah 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 blah, and basically she said no, this is just the evolution. And I said, well, you honestly believe these mosquitoes have just evolved, to carry this deadly virus or whatever they're going to do? I said, do you not think it would make more sense to say that they would have been brought into a laboratory and maybe genetically modified or engineered? And she said, no. And again, I was told, I was a conspiracy theorist and I should cop on and all this carry on. But this is the same lady who was raving about the government there a couple of weeks back and saying, we get the government we deserve, but we shouldn't vote for independence and we shouldn't vote for other parties, but we should kind of stick to the mainstream because although they lie to us, they're the best that we have because they've had plenty of experience and stuff like that. Anyway, if that's the people who are going to be voting in the next election, people like herself, if they're in the majority, I have to say we're screwed. Anyway. So, yeah. We are screwed. What else are we going to say? I was going to mention there about Enda Kenny, but I won't. I'll just move on. James James Randi. Anyone, if you've been kind of around for a while, you may have heard the name James Randi. He's 87 years of age. And when we had different guests on over the past couple of weeks, and some guests are talking about kinesiology, and we've looked into that, and I can see benefits of kinesiology. But you can't just look at everything, kind of on one side of the
coin.
No, the thing that goes up and down, the seesaw.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a technical name for a seesaw. So I was just trying to find other people who were kind of saying that it was all negative as opposed to positive, the likes of the kinesiology and stuff like that. And I came across this guy called James Randi. And seeing me James Randi, he's 87 years of age. He's debunked everyone.
Yes, that's
everyone.
Right. Yeah.
There's no one safe from James Randi. But yeah, seemingly he's got a lot of videos where he's debunked all these things, and he even tried to debunk kinesiology. He's tried to debunk psychic mediums and stuff like that. And he has, I think it's $1 million he has up for grabs if anyone can go and prove that they do have any of these abilities. If anyone out there, knows someone who can and will be willing to do it, they could be $1 million richer.
He won't give that million. People have challenged him by that $1 million.
People have challenged him, yeah.
And he won't accept it because he knows that he's going to lose the $1 million.
No, there's actually some very big psychic medium, seemingly in the UK. And they talked about this on one of the This Morning programs with that chap with the grey hair who is not, he does some TV show.
Peter Schofield, isn't it?
Philip Schofield, yeah. And they talked about this lady, and seemingly she actually went. She said that she'd put her money where her mouth is, but when she went, he has all these kind of terms and conditions, So I mean, I don't know what the terms and conditions are, but seemingly she went to put her money where her mouth was. He gave her all the terms and conditions, and she walked away.
Was it a blonde lady?
I don't know.
It's probably Mia Dolan. I think it was probably Mia Dolan who did that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were so many terms and conditions that you just have to walk away because it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I think you have to. Obviously, you have to do it under probably stressful circumstances, and in a closed box hanging from a ceiling or something.
Or you have to materialise somebody in front of you or something like that. Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to say that we're checking that out. I'm checking out kind of both sides of the seesaw anyway to see. But we did hook up with Stephanie Ralph last week, and as you know, Stephanie did give us some DVDs. I went home, I checked out the DVD 1 of 12, and myself and my wife had a little experiment just using these steps in the video, and I have to say, it went quite well. I was surprised.
Really?
I was actually quite surprised. So yeah, that's it. So we're going to keep on check out DVD number 2. That's going to be tomorrow, and we'll see where we go from there.
Brilliant
anyway,
stuff.
So how's your week?
Yeah, well listen, I'm going to cover my week after. We want to get Richard in because obviously we have 2 guests on tonight. So I'll do my week at the end of the show. Few things to talk about there. But before we get Richard in, do you want to tell us a bit about Richard's background?
Yes.
Just we have the unscripted script.
Just let me get to the page. Right, here we go. I'm going to just read it, as if I'm not reading it. Richard Cranor is a guest this evening. Richard directed a film called Starleaf, which is currently on iTunes, Amazon and Google Play, and starring Russell Hodgkinson of the hit sci-fi zombie show Z Nation. And it's receiving rave reviews for its fascinating and original take on the paranormal connections between cannabis, extraterrestrials, post-traumatic stress disorder and the parallel universe.
Brilliant stuff. Good evening, Richard. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good, guys. I'm especially good since you started talking about James Randi, because I got a little story for you regarding James Randi here in a second.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, we'll talk about that. Before we get in and talk about your movie, Starleaf, which myself and Steve have watched, do you want to tell us about your background and why you made the actual movie?
Oh, okay. Well, for me, I'm just, I was always an artist type, and in the United States, it's actually kind of very, very difficult to find any employment in the arts. We're not a very arts, we don't have any arts funding in this country. So, it's always been a bit of a struggle. I worked for actually Microsoft for a period of time to try and pay some bills. But, a couple of years ago, I just started making films more. I just started trying to get more into the film business as an actor, and then I became more of a writer and a director as well. And then, I was just inspired by a lot of different things that have happened in my life. I've had certain paranormal experiences. I had a brother who had a bad case of PTSD from the Iraq War. I got cancer. So somehow I just saw this weird confluence of things kind of coming together, and I found a way to try, at least, to make some art about it all. So Because again, I think there's some very important messaging and messages that need to get out to the world at large. It's starting. I was actually feeling pretty hopeful, but then you talked about that woman in the woman you talked to about the mosquitoes, and there's still a lot of people who just don't know what's really going on. And I just think it's important that our culture, especially our arts, reflect, I think, what the current zeitgeist really is, because I think it's only through art and it's only through communications like what you guys are doing that you can really fight back now, because and we have to start thinking about what our priorities really are as a human race. And I know it's a marijuana and alien film, and most people think, what? This is going to be stupid. And there are some definite stupid moments in it, but that's kind of how I felt I needed to approach, the people, is basically give them something they wouldn't expect would be anything worth watching, and then hopefully extract something from it that's a little bit more profound than they expected.
Okay. So tell us about the actual movie. And why, the funding, how you put it together, and why you put it together, and what's behind it.
Well, basically, so when I was going through cancer, I kept noticing people smoking marijuana and using cannabis and other treatments to try to get better, and it really did start working for them. And I grew up around marijuana being it's a Schedule I drug in the United States, so it's even more illegal than cocaine. And I also, when I was going through cancer, I tried to eat really healthy. I tried to stay away from as many GMO foods as I could. And when I started really looking at holistically, I started seeing how marijuana was just being vilified, in ways that were kind of absurd, or really absurd for what it is. I don't really use cannabis myself that much, but cannabis became more of like the redheaded stepchild of this country. And the more I looked into why it was that, the more I realized it's because there are a lot of people with power that don't want to see access to the plant. And why don't they want to see access to the plant? Because it threatens their profit models. It's really that simple. And then when you see a whole government structure built around that, then it gets scary. It gets scary that we live in a world where something that can grow just about anywhere in the United States that provides food, clothing, energy, all kinds of other things, construction materials that people could get for free. You know what I mean? So for me, I wanted to take marijuana and I wanted to show, and it's not just about getting people to smoke marijuana, because I don't care if people do, but it is a plant ally to us. And in fact, a lot of nature is our friend and it's our ally. And it's about the perspective that's been shifted and how we can, start looking at it more sanely. But for me, I just wrote the script. I put it all together. We found some guys, a distributor in Hollywood that was willing to take a chance on us. And, we shot it for very little money. I don't think I'm still supposed to tell people how much we shot it for, but it was a tiny amount of money. But I shot it in my backyard. I grew 30 marijuana plants. One of them was eaten by a slug. Wow. So it went down to 29. And just like any other guerrilla filmmaking story, we just filled in a lot of favors and ran around the woods, the same woods where they've shot Twilight and a lot of other, forest feature films. And yeah, we just sort of made it happen.
So the whole idea of the movie, obviously you have three people involved, two guys and a girl, and they go into this forest where there's supposed to be really, really good cannabis. Right. And things start happening. They start smoking it, and things start happening. Yeah. So tell us without giving the plot away, and telling the whole story, tell us, what's behind it.
Well, okay, so the whole idea for Starleaf, it's cannabis, but it functions more like ayahuasca would function. It's more of like an hallucinogenic strain that's, of course, extraterrestrial. So it's basically opening up a door, because the two main characters are Marines who were in Afghanistan, and there was a traumatic event that caused them to both suffer quite a bit. And so one of them finds out about the Starleaf, and it can supposedly cure you of your PTSD, which is that's his pitch to his friend who doesn't normally smoke. The guy that's wanting to find the weed himself is actually not really motivated to fix his PTSD at all. He just wants to get super, super high. So I'm taking kind of what is out there in the real world, people wanting to get super high, people wanting to cure themselves, and just sort of creating a dynamic with that. But so they go out there, and of course one of them steals it, which is a big no-no. You don't steal the weed, especially when it's planted by what might be angels. And so they steal the weed, and all hell breaks loose from that point forward. But the goal of the marijuana itself, the star leaf, I should say, is really to open up a portal to higher consciousness. And of course, you have to be very careful when you're opening up these portals to higher consciousness, because along the way, they can be hijacked by these aliens. So that's kind of what happens, is these aliens, these grays, these, which to me, I don't know really what a gray is. But I've been around, I've had experiences with what I would call non-physical intelligences. Something out there that is intelligent, that doesn't have a body. And I guess the old word for it is demon or poltergeist or whatever. And I've had those types of experiences. And so I just sort of like, and I did some research in all this, I noticed that gray alien abductions have a lot in common with medieval stories about demons. And so I just put it all together in that way. I know in Islam, in Muslim countries, they talk about the jinn a lot. So that's the spin that I went with, was that they open up a portal to healing, but of course, if you don't navigate it successfully, you also can invite a little chaos. And I'll wrap it up, but the other thing, too, to think about that's, I think, really, really fascinating, and what I'm going to explore in the sequel, because we're actually working on a sequel now, is the King Solomon of Israel. He built the temple, according to the Keys of Solomon, using both angels and demons. So there's a weird sort of connection between healing and overcoming trauma, where you have to face the darkness first, and then you get better. So that was the whole story of Starleaf. Okay, so you obviously, as you said earlier, you had cancer. Did you take the cannabis oil to cure that cancer? No, I didn't, actually. My cancer was pretty severe. It was stage 3 testicular cancer, and before I even knew what was happening, I was being, told to take all this chemo, and I had the same regimen as Lance Armstrong, minus one cycle. So I went 3 cycles, he went 4. I took 3 or 4 different types of chemo. He took 2 because he was afraid of one of them scarring his lungs. I took the one that scars your lungs, but luckily I didn't get scarred. But for me, it's kind of a longer story that I can probably get into later, but it was just that when I was going through it and I was doing research on it, I kept reading about things like immunotherapy. I kept reading about, cannabis and how it affects. And I talked to my oncologist about it, and, he was just kind of like, he was really honest. He told me, it's a business, dude. It's like, this is a business. Now, we know that if you take this chemo, it's like a shotgun effect to your system, but we know it's most likely going to work because we've got the trials and the studies that have been done on it. Now, they don't have those on cannabis yet because no one's making any money off of it. But there are people out there who have taken the Rick Simpson oil and completely cured themselves because their cancers were also very severe, but there weren't a lot of hopeful protocols. I mean, testicular cancer has, according to the research out there, a 70 to 90% success rate for the person. Now, that doesn't cover the mutilation you have to go through. I was very lucky that I didn't have to get my lymphatic nodes removed from my abdomen, which some guys have to do, and they never achieve erections again. They have to wear a colostomy bag. I mean, when they say success, you have to take it with a certain grain of salt. I made it through pretty well, but again, I almost died several times during the actual therapy, where one day they gave me some news. They blew out my immune system so bad I had no immune system, and they told me, don't even touch a bruised apple, because if you eat a bruised apple, that little brown spot that's in the apple could kill you. Wow. So that's the thing we have to understand about cancer. Like, chemo can work for certain people and all this other kind of stuff, but at what cost? And why is there no incentive to expand beyond chemo? It's because they're locked in. There's a nice consistent supply of people getting cancer, and they have a money train set up to make the most of it. Exactly. And of course, what we're seeing with the environment, with wireless technology and everything else thrown in, with the poisons in the food, it's a nice industry and a lot of money to be made by the chemo. Yeah, absolutely. Now, based on the information that you have now, hindsight is a great thing. If, for example, you went into you got the cancer, it came back. Yeah. Would you take the same route, or would you look at the cannabis oil? Yeah, I would definitely not want to go down that route again. But here's a longer story, and I'll try to wrap it up really quick. Now, the thing about my experience with the disease, it taught me a lot about disease. It taught me that it's part of a lot of different things that are playing out in the human being. You can't just look at it from a physical point of view. There could be a physical genetic predisposition towards a disease, but there are people that have those all the time and never get the disease that their relatives might get. So for me, I discovered halfway through before my treatment even started that I was praying a lot. I was doing a lot of spiritual work before even, and I was already going through a tremendous spiritual awakening process called a Kundalini awakening, which I can get into later. So I was already pretty well versed in what the possible alternative healing methods were. But every time I tried to go down a different route, I kept getting pointed back to the chemo, and I never really understood why. It wasn't until maybe the first cycle when I was in the ward and I was getting that stuff administered to me, and I was getting it administered 5 times a week for about 8 hours a day, just a straight shot of chemo pouring into my bloodstream for 8 hours a day. It wasn't until my dad showed up to help me get through the treatments that I realized why I was really in cancer treatments at this chemo. Was because my father and I had a horrible relationship as kids growing up, and as a kid growing up, and he was my mortal enemy. I understood when I started going through the chemo that I was forced to be in this bed in a very vulnerable position next to a man who I was terrified of most of my life. And that was where the real healing began, because he had joined AA, he had stopped drinking, and I realized that emotionally I needed this healing to happen between me and my father, because that was compromising my immune system as much as my cancer was, And so you can't really clear a lot of disease, and you can't overcome a lot of health issues if your emotions and your spirit, I think, is really weighed down in a way that your immune system is compromised. I went and saw a therapist when I was younger, and they kept saying, you've got way too active, what is it, the fight or flight syndrome? It's just
adrenaline,
Yeah, it was permanently on in me. And so I would take meditation, I would do whatever I could to try. But over time, that really wears out your insides, having this all this cortisone in your body constantly. So those things do factor into how you cure a disease, because if you can't control the mind and you can't help the mind, the body's not going to do much better, on its own.
Yeah. Well, the mind controls the body. The body just does what the mind tells it to do.
And if your mind is telling you things that you don't even know of, telling your body things you're not even conscious of, that's where the real trouble begins, because our unconscious mind is really what's controlling your body's cellular functions and whatnot. And that's not the same mind you're using to, update your Facebook status with or whatever. That's like a much deeper part of yourself that's connected to your cellular memories and your emotions. And those things can splinter off and wreak all kinds of havoc in your body. And, part of like ayahuasca therapy and part of these hallucinogenic plant therapies that the shamans do, they have a term for it called rescuing the cat from the tree, or the jaguar from the tree, which is synonymous with this idea that there's a part of you early on when you experience trauma, especially at a very young age, where you'll splinter off. A part of you will just sort of splinter off and segment itself, and you can't access it consciously anymore for the rest of your life. And that's what creates so many neuroses in people. But some of these plants, and I call it, and Starleaf is one of these plants in the film, act as a chemical catalyst to reconfiguring that part of your psyche so that it can heal itself. You can take the Band-Aid off and let it regel however it needs to, and take the cat from the tree. Because how cats are. Cats go up in a tree, and once they're up there, they don't know how they got up there, but they're up there, now they're stuck. And that's kind of how parts of your psyche will break off through trauma.
Well, funny you should say that, because Kathy O'Brien, who did she was a sex slave from a very young age, and she was rescued when she was older. But what they do is they bring a sex slave to a certain age, and they don't want them smoking marijuana or cannabis, because it opens up memories, awakens them up, it changes the neural pathways. So they normally kill the sex slaves before they reach the age of 30 or stop them smoking. And what she did is, when she was rescued, she was smoking it, and then all these memories start coming back of things that have happened to her. I think it was Mark Phillips, or was the guy that rescued her. And it's just funny that so many people have said, like the ayahuasca, it's opening up kind of a spiritual portal, and you have to be careful. I think you have to be you have to be in the right space and the right mind before you'd kind of get involved in that, because maybe you could go on a negative trip rather than a positive trip. I don't know. So I think you really have to be kind of tuned in before you kind of take that journey.
That's why, yeah, exactly. That's why I don't consider that stuff recreational. I don't think it's recreational at all. I consider it very therapeutic. And so when you talk about bad trips, the reason you're having the bad trip is because, in order to, it's like cleaning a fish tank. I don't know if you ever clean a fish tank, but when you're trying to sweep up the gravel at the bottom of that fish tank, if you look at the surrounding water now, it's got all this debris floating in it. It's the fish are gasping for air. They're trying to get by. So for a temporary period of time, all this bad stuff is going to come up and it's going to float around in your awareness. And it's very uncomfortable because it's a part of who you are, but it's not a permanent part of who you are. But your mind at the time can't see the difference because it's just overwhelmed from the feeling. So yeah, you can have terrible trips because of the nature of life. Life has these I think negative experiences and even negative entities that I think interfere with what we're trying to accomplish here as human beings. So you got to have someone to help you through that, to help guide you through it. And to think of it as a recreational thing is a huge mistake. I don't think it is.
Mind you, at the end of the day, over in America especially, there's a lot of states legalizing cannabis. And I think there is a difference. I did read research on this, where there's a difference between the actual proper cannabis plant and the skunk that's on the street. The skunk that's on the street is full of chemicals, and that's what's causing the psychosis in a lot of young people. And of course, people are taking the drug cannabis or marijuana and saying, oh, this is what it causes, without thinking about, well, hang on, there's obviously research being done. And there is a difference here. If you grow a cannabis plant in your back garden and bring it in and smoke it, you're not going to get the same stuff or get affected by what you get from the skunk on the street.
Yeah, the pesticides are really a big problem right now. I live in Washington State where they've legalized it, and that's become the new battle, is trying to figure out how do you get weed that's not full of pesticides. Because I believe it or not, big THC is coming. They talk about big tobacco. Big THC is definitely going to be coming here shortly to try and corner the market on cannabis. And that's kind of what I'm dealing with the sequel. And of course, big THC, they're just going to employ the same methods that GMOs have been doing for the last 30, 40 years, which is horrible. So, they're starting to outlaw the ability in Washington to grow medical marijuana on your own. I think they still allow it a little bit, but they're always fighting for it. Everyone's always fighting to be able to grow pesticide-free private marijuana for themselves and their family. So again, even when they legalize something, there's still people trying to just, adapt to that and find a way to make it work for themselves. One more thing about keeping your cannabis experiences positive and your other plant experiences positive. In a lot of cultures, like in India, when someone's about to undergo a spiritual process like that, they fast. They do a lot of things to rid their bodies of impurities before they even go into those states. And there's a lot of discipline usually employed with meditation. So what's missing really from modern approaches to therapy using these plants is discipline, that ancient cultures used to always push and employ. So when people complain now about having bad trips, it's because they weren't ready for the trip to begin with. You got to prepare, I think, a lot of ways psychologically for what you're about to encounter on this journey. So we're an instant culture now. We want instant, I'll take a trip down here for a day or two and do a retreat somewhere and I'll meditate, learn to levitate. It's not going to happen. You need to meditate for years sometimes before you really try to tackle some of these issues. And these plants, they're just catalysts. They're not the answer, but I think they're an ally.
Well, I will say there's a video out there on YouTube, and it's called Granny Smokes Weed. And it's about these elderly ladies in California who are smoking weed, and they say they feel fantastic. Now, I believe in Spain, now, I don't know, I was told this, I don't know how true it is, maybe somebody in Spain can confirm this or not, but you can grow up to 6 plants for your own personal use, any more, and you're obviously, classed as a drug dealer. But you can grow up to 6. Now, I think that's pretty good. If people were allowed to grow up to 6 plants in their back garden for their own medicinal purposes, and that could be Now, if they want to smoke it, that's fine, but you could actually make the cannabis oil, you could make cakes, you could do juice, you can do a lot of stuff. And you can get the industrial hemp, where it has more CBD and less THC.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that should be allowed. And I think, especially in the States, well, you guys are like 15 years ahead of us over here in Ireland. You really are. For the sake that most of the states are actually legalizing because they realize actually, it's a plant and it's not a drug, and that was all caused by, if you go back in history to the early 1900s and you look at the DuPont family, they had their legislation put in place by their people in government and their minions in government because the hemp industry was a competition to them.
Yeah.
So they had their people in government to actually make it illegal and to give it a Mexican name, marijuana, to make it sound really bad. And that's the history. And a lot of people don't know that that's the history of marijuana and cannabis. And it's purely a business deal, a business transaction. It's just business. That's all it was. But again, we've inherited in this information and the legalization from the States, the same with aspartame and certain chemicals and drugs. We've just inherited it without people actually saying, well, actually, we want to check this out for ourselves and not just believing what we're told.
Well, it's so true. And for me, again, I'm not a big cannabis user at all. I had someone made me some cookies the other day. I took like a little chunk of one and I fell asleep. So that's the extent of my cannabis use. But I've watched these veterans who, and again, a lot of this is based upon the veteran angle. I've seen these guys come back from a war, and they're given a bunch of opiates that don't do a whole lot of good, and most of them kill themselves. My brother tried killing himself. That's kind of how it all started. I got a phone call from my mom saying he had pulled, I think he had a gun in his mouth or something, or he tried swallowing, I think it was pills. I think he took a lot of pills. He was wound up in the hospital. I wasn't able to go see him because he's in a state that's pretty far away, but I started talking to him on the phone. I call up his veterans, his counselor at the Veterans Department. And after about, a year or so, we got him, I think, mostly squared away. He doesn't use cannabis either. I gotta admit, he's still kind of a work in progress. But then I started networking with other veterans groups. There's a group out here in Olympia called 22 Many, and they're all dedicated to using cannabis to treat their PTSD. And it works. I mean, it keeps these guys it takes the edge off. And for me, it's a success if you can go from a gun in your mouth to putting the gun on the table. That's, in the beginning, that's all you can do. It's like a first aid, I think, for a lot of guys who are suffering. So not everyone needs it, not everyone wants to use it, but it needs to be an option for people that have sacrificed, what they've sacrificed. And the other options aren't really that great. Most of the stuff that the U.S. government treats, well, first of all, the U.S. government doesn't even want to admit that PTSD is a problem. That's already like a huge red flag. Yeah. And if they do, they'll just give you opiates. And marijuana, as far as I know, has never been shown to kill anyone through toxicity. So what's the deal? What's the big deal? Like, let them smoke a plant that will calm them down, get them out of that mindset of wanting to kill themselves, and then we'll continue to investigate how to cure PTSD as we go. But we need that first aid, I think, and that's what cannabis is.
Definitely. I agree with you on that one. Now, we have, obviously we have to watch the time. We have a few questions in, so Steve, over to you.
Yeah, Richard, we have a question from Joan, and Joan is wondering, it's a kind of a two-part question. Question number one, how are you aware of, how do you deal with chemtrails, and do you grow your own products undercover, she says?
Do I grow my own marijuana or anti-chemtrail products? Oh, no, I don't. Right now I don't, because I'm sort of in transition. I've been just traveling around promoting the film. So I get tons of marijuana given to me almost every day. I'm a walking cannabis magnet right now. I have people I have a whole, my desk right now is covered in oils and extracts, things that I don't have the THC tolerance to handle what most people are doing now. I mean, most people's THC levels are they're just more experienced than I am. So when I smoke a joint, I'm good. They smoke a joint and they're like, come on, we got to do more than just this. Because one thing I've noticed, and they did a study, the Washington State Patrol, who manages the highways around here, they tried to prove that smoking cannabis is as bad as being drunk at the wheel. And it doesn't really correlate. A lot of these guys became more careful drivers And so they were really quite shocked at how cannabis doesn't make you. And I'm sure in some cases that you should not be driving if you're too stoned, but it's nowhere near as bad as people think it's going to be for you. So I don't smoke right now a whole lot myself because I just get so much free cannabis. But as far as chemtrails go, I think the thing about chemtrails is there's a lot going on, I think, with HAARP and with the atmosphere. Again, I don't know what's causing climate change. I don't know if it's even really happening, but I do know that there's a precedent in human history for the U.S. government spraying things in the air. I mean, they did it in, I think, the 60s. There was a famous, it's on Wikipedia, you can find this anywhere, where they sprayed San Francisco with some sort of chemical as a Cold War test run scenario, and they didn't tell anybody. I think they sprayed some kind of flu virus out there. So I just, I don't know how to fight it. I just know that I know it's a very distinct possibility that it is happening, and there's a precedent for it. And I think we just have to keep, as people, keep exposing it for what it is and asking questions so that, we can keep our head out of the sand.
Yeah, no, actually, when I was watching your film, as with a lot of films these days, a lot of movies, I think there's a desensitizing project going on to try and desensitize people to the whole chemtrails and make it normal. And just because I'm like we're so clued in about it over here, that whenever we are watching films, you just kind of look up at the background just to see if there's any chemtrails being superimposed, just to kind of desensitize people. But I didn't notice any in yours, so that was quite good. And just I was going to say to you as well, you did mention earlier, because we are watching the time, and you did mention earlier you were going to give us a little insight into James Randi, and I don't want to kind of get away from that one. I don't want that to get away from us. Sorry.
Well, so you guys are talking about people that have tried to. First of all, I respect what he's trying to do. He's trying to keep people from being exploited.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, a lot of scientists now have become very militant to the point where they're just as afraid of being exposed, because there's a huge, huge gaping hole in the way science approaches life right now and understanding the universe. And that hole is consciousness. A lot of people like to pretend that there's some sort of definitive understanding of what consciousness is, and therefore any movies or any talk about supernatural phenomena is all BS. And that's completely untrue, because it's called basically the hard problem of consciousness. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard that term, but it was put out there probably 20, 30 years ago. And the scientists don't want to talk about it because it exposes the hole in the scientific model, which is the very thing they're using to understand the universe with, the very thing they're using to measure objective measurements of the universe with, is still the biggest variable. There's still so much mystery associated with it. Rupert Sheldrake is a famous, I think he's a British scientist who put together a theory about morphic fields. Well, he actually took Randi up on this challenge, and this is all very well documented on the internet, and even James Randi himself has admitted this. He went and did a test with James Randi, and according to Rupert Sheldrake, he completely passed it. Now, when James Randi has been asked about this, and there was an article, I think, in the Huffington Post maybe a month ago about it, he says the data was lost in the flood. See what I'm saying? So it's kind of like when you do win, and if you do go up against these guys, and you do start proving proof of the paranormal, it forces their hand in a way they probably didn't expect, because the paranormal, in my opinion, is just nature, the way it really works. We just haven't found a way to measure it efficiently. And real quick, there's an organization called IONS out of California, led by not James Randi, Dean Radin, who, using meta-analysis, has proven statistically that not every instance of psychic phenomena is real, of course, but there is enough consistency with certain tests that have been done to show that there's a significant hit rate over random to basically through statistics show that paranormal things do happen from time to time. So what is that method that's causing that? What is the medium that's causing it? They don't quite know yet. But again, it's just an example of how, because of the belief system that some people have, whether it's religion, spirituality, or science, it can skew the way data is interpreted. And James Randi is guilty of that. He said it was a flood. Rupert Sheldrake came out and said it was a fire. I can't remember how it all works out. But if you look up all of this on the internet, you'll see that there's definitely a huge discrepancy there.
Yeah, I'm just making some notes here as well. I'm going to check that out, Rupert Sheldrake. Because I'll be kind of interested because, we have different guests on here, and if you look through our archives, there's so many people who've been on here, and, everyone has a story to tell. Some people are psychic mediums, and they will give us their, what they believe to be true. And a lot of times they can offer proof, and then when you hear someone coming on and going, "Oh, it's a load of baloney," and then they try to explain it away with a science, for want of a better word, and you kind of go, "Oh, really?" So all these people who are out there, how many have been faking it? I mean, look, well, I think we all know. I think every one of us listening tonight knows of or has heard of Peter Popoff. I mean, he's a bad guy, and he's been kind of doing it for years, deceiving and defrauding people. And I believe he's at it again. He's over, or he was over in Australia doing it now, because I think he was banned from the US. But seemingly, but that guy's been since he was debunked as a faker. He's still raking in the money. There's more people going to him now, from what I've heard. I think
brilliant. People never learn, did they? No. They never learn. Unbelievable. Yeah. But James Randi, we've mentioned him before on the show, doing other experiments about reading people's minds and how easy it is to read. But we just have a couple of minutes left, and I do want to touch base on the whole the ET side of things. If you can kind of do a small synopsis on why the ET side was involved in the Starleaf movie.
Yeah, I guess I'm driven by these encounters that I had as a child, and even the last couple of years, I keep having what I would call visits from not extraterrestrial, but I call them non-physical intelligences. Now, I just linked it to the ET phenomenon because I feel like when we sometimes look at UFOs and we sometimes look at these alien things, we look at it too much in a materialistic point of view. We see it from the point of view of material reality too much. I don't think material reality is as real as we say it is, or our science tells us it is. I think it's more of a continuum and a frequency issue between like voltages. You have a power station that puts out power. As it goes down the line, there's transformers that step it down. So these transformers are like the way stations for where a reality takes off from. And our physical reality is a calibration. If you really think about it, it's an agreed upon calibration of a lot of different electrons who decide that, this is going to be touch, this is going to be taste, this is going to be smell. But they're configurations, if you think about it, that we all agree upon through our bodies. So I just kind of wanted to bring up the idea that maybe what we're seeing with ETs and UFOs is both a combination of the physical and other planes of existence that are connecting together, and that it's sort of where the boundaries are that we see these things. So they're real, but then again, what is real? I think real is energy. So I linked that to the culture of demonology, because based on what some of these ETs are doing to people, they're reminiscent of what a lot of demon culture talks about. And as crazy as that sounds, using that word demon, I just think of it as something that is intelligent, that doesn't particularly like human beings for whatever reason. And so, and not every alien encounter is like that. I mean, there's some benevolent alien encounters that people talk about. There maybe some are as physical as us. I don't know. But for me, I wanted to explore the idea that there are these entities out there who benefit from human suffering. And that's kind of what I feel some of these things are doing.
Okay, well, we've actually heard this about them sucking negative energy, and that's what they feed off, because we are all energy.
Right.
So
definitely.
So that makes sense to me, But Richard, we've reached that time, unfortunately. Brilliant information. I'm going to pass you over to Steve to get all the information. Good luck with your movie. As I say, I enjoyed watching it. And I'd love to know where the forest is, but that's
the backyard.
Is it? Okay. We'll have to go there sometime. But a big thank you for coming on the show. Thanks for getting in touch with us, and thanks for giving us the link to see the movie. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get all your details where you can tell everybody where to find you. Steve.
Yeah, Richard, it's been great information. Unfortunately, we only have limited time with you. Maybe in the future we could hook up and even do a part 2, because a lot of people on the chat room there looking for a part 2. They're saying it's great, good information.
Oh, right.
And you're a very down to earth guy. So So if anyone wants to find out more information about you or the movie or what you got planned, do you have any links you can throw at us there?
Yeah, just StarleafMovie.com has most of our up-to-date information. And, of course, we have a Facebook page and a Twitter page. That's where I'm more active. And we have a YouTube as well.
Right, so so people just go to the website StarleafMovie.com. They will get all the links.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, Richard, just stay with us there. We're going to go off to a musical break, and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Okay, and we're back sowing the seeds of love there, because we haven't got any other seeds to sow. But there we go. Yeah, that was good information there from Richard Cranor. Do check out the film, StarleafMovie.com. It's definitely worth a watch. It's only, I think, it's an hour and 15 minutes, so it's not even the full 90 minutes. Definitely worth a watch. Do check it out. As we said, it is available on Amazon and iTunes, so have a look, see what you think.
I'm checking it out. Right, our next guest is Joe Puente. Is that how we pronounced it? We'll get the right pronunciation in a minute.
Yeah, Joe Puente.
All right, we're going to get Joe on in a minute. We're just going to give you a bit of a background about Joe, and then we'll get Joe in.
Yeah, Joe Puente has been a practicing spiritualist since an early age. His intense desire to solve some basic life's riddles prompted him to study various belief systems as well as spiritual practices. These studies and personal practices over time have resulted in first-hand accounts of a very mysterious world. His accounts are written in a book entitled Things Magical Once Hidden Revealed, My Personal Awakening of Magic, Mysticism and Miracles.
Fantastic. Good evening, Joe. How are you doing?
Good evening, you guys. How are you guys doing, Alan?
Not too bad. Thanks for coming on to Open Your Mind Radio. Now, Steve just read out a little bit of your bio. I know it's a bit longer than that. So before we get into anything, just tell us about yourself and just expand a little bit more on your biography there.
Excellent. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, well, this basically surrounds my life experiences on the mystical path. I'm very familiar with the West understanding of things of the mystical, magic, miracles and all that stuff. There's a lot of skepticism. And I'm hoping that, and what I bring to the table not only brings like some of the evidence, scientific evidence, but also the personal experiences. And for those who are walking some given path and who are studying their own, say, innate potential, my book kind of works as a guide to show what happens, what to expect, how to, refine certain techniques, if you will, to be able to access these other levels of consciousness, which are very real. And I've been around many psychics, so like they have definitely validated my experiences. Not that I needed it, but for more of a public audience, because a lot of this stuff could be very new and hard to believe for some people. So, yes. Okay, so basically that's what I cover. And what ultimately got me involved in this stuff was at a very young age, I always felt just like, the world really didn't make too much sense, being as intelligent of a design it is, and yet we're still walking around, being confused about certain things, not knowing why we're here. So it was these basic prompts that, seeing myself as some dynamic animated object, being able to think creatively and all this stuff in the world, the universe, as you look up to the sky, you're like, there's something going on besides what we're told, And at a young age, probably like about maybe 13, 14 years old is when I really started looking into like various belief systems. And ultimately, I was guided to like New Age information through my older brother. And that's where I found that there was some amazing stuff going on, and I had to get my first-hand experiences with it. So I was definitely going to spiritual classes, doing the meditations, buying books here and there. And during that period, I used to refer to that period as like the boot camp, meditation days, because I was so intense. Like I was so sure that I'd experienced something that, nothing was going to stand in the way. And finally, the egg started cracking, so to speak.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and little by little, the more I started doing it, the more experience I started having. And then this ultimately came in relation towards being that it was New Age information that I was reading at that early age. I was seeing how it was connected towards this whole New Age concept, and what the New Age was about, higher consciousness. At first, I was very skeptical about it, but the more I started reading about it, the more I started having experiences, the more it started revealing that there was actually something behind it after all. Yes, and so hopefully that helped.
Do you think the New Age has been hijacked, and there's a difference between the spiritual and the New Age?
Absolutely. That's a very good point in regards to this, because it is a pretty important question, because we're at a crossroads, I believe, as a planet, because, it's just, there's so much chaos, for one, and at the same time, there's so much potential that we have to get back on track to where we have to organically grow in our own evolution, And it's important that we inquire upon the spiritual metaphysical aspect of life, because then it'll get you back on track as to where we're ultimately supposed to go, as to where all the prophecies refer to. And yes, I do believe it's been hijacked in regards to information, I believe a lot of hype was surrounding this whole New Age concept as, such as the thing, the end of the world, right? I mean, you have movies like 2012, referring to like, oh, this world's going to end. No. Even the Mayans say like, no, it's just like a transition of an age,
Okay.
And if you want to go into the ages, it's basically every age has a different personality type for humanity, And as we progress, we're, getting more attuned to the more subtler vibrations of, we discover energy, how to manipulate it. And, the next phases should be understanding the aspects of consciousness.
So,
yes.
So where are we now? Because obviously we spoke to our last guest, and we always say as well that we are all energy. I mean,
yes.
Science tells us that if you get an electron microscope and drill down and look at your hand, you will see atoms vibrating. If you get the same electron microscope and drill down and look at the table or the chair or the computer, you see atoms vibrating. So we're all energy, we're all resonating. Now, the consciousness of the planet seems to be changing. What's your take on that? What do you think is happening? What's going on at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt that there is, people are beginning to wake up, I think we have to give a lot of thanks to things like the internet. Information is so easily and quickly accessible. Things that used to be highly hidden, is now quite available it's like you have your own library and, on your lap, pretty much, if you have a laptop, right? I think it's really, creating the change of mind that people are beginning to open up more towards these, at times, hard to believe possibilities. I mean, even with science, now they're beginning to say, like, hey, well, maybe these mystic people were right in multiple dimensions, such as Michio Kaku. He's a
scientist, yeah.
Yes, and he even comes to now, because he introduces the concept of I believe it's, string theory, or like, where we live in a world of infinite universes.
Yeah.
So it's quite possible that, what they were talking about, these ghosts, these mystic powers, that could be an actual dimension that people are just accessing, So I think before, science was very much against this subject, but, on the mainstream surface, there are those individual scientists that have looked into, like, the psychic abilities, even governments have studied, paranormal stuff. So there is information out there, there is evidence, and I think it's beginning to flood the internet, I think, a lot more apparently nowadays, when, because more people are catching interest, so they're sharing their information, and we're beginning to learn some fascinating stuff,
And how do you define what is disinformation as opposed to real information? You yourself, when you come across it, if you're doing your research, because we have to be careful with the spiritual and New Age. And we know the New Age has been hijacked, and we know we've been told by previous guests that, if you put the truth in a barrel full of lies, it's very hard to find it. And there's so much New Agey ascension process going to happen, and all this kind of stuff. How do you define that? How do you separate the wheat from the chaff and decide what's right and what's disinformation?
That's a very good question, because there are a lot of fanciful ideas as to what's supposed to happen. Like what is it, the rapture, right, from the Bible, for instance.
That's right, yeah.
Or things like we're gonna be abducted by aliens and they're gonna take us to a comet like that. That cult group that ended up committing suicide, all that. You're right. There are some strange ideas out there. When it comes to the subject, so you basically have to deal with it as grounded as possible. I'm not saying to go live in the mountains, because the world's going to end. Nothing of that nature. It's very practical. Keep your day jobs, because there's extremists in everything. So that's not the route one should take. It's very it's pretty much, we got to implement the word wisdom again, right? We got to make sure that there's sound, it's sound, and that it's not something that pretty much could be detrimental towards our own understanding, our own psyche, you know. And pretty much the process is self-awakening, you know. Everything can be brought down to a simple formula. And it's the same thing with this whole New Age concept. If it's designed to happen, if it's predestined to happen, it's going to happen, whether we, you know, whatever we do with it. It's just being aware of the process seems to be where we should be at the time right now. Considering that it is the beginning of a new age. I mean, we're looking at the baby form, you know, not the adult form. You consider what a baby can do to a planet, and, you know, an adult can. There's a vast world of a difference, you know. But we're seeing those buds grow, and the way we should, as a conscious planet, you know, that has to cognize things and integrate it into their understanding, to, you know, think reasonably logically towards the subject, is to basically, the first thing is to simply be aware things are changing, you know. One thing that remains constant is change. And it's like, okay, this information is coming to us. What does it mean to us? You know, where should we go with it? It's ultimately showing you who you truly are, and your connectedness towards your creator, you know.
Can I ask you about what you've just said there? I mean, would you define that self-awakening and self-awareness are two different things, and two things that we have to be aware of, and are not the same thing?
They can be separated. At the same time, though, when you bring them together, which is an interesting point, because, yeah, you could be aware, you could be a conscious living individual, you know, being aware of your environment, and at the same time not do anything, kind of like sitting at the bleachers at a game, you know? Are you going to be a part of the game, or are you going to be, you know, watching it, kind of, so to speak? I believe that there should be a healthy balance of both in regards to, yes, if these things are true, you know, these mystical realities, obviously there's, you know, there's laws that should be abided by so we don't stray too far for where we should be taking our individual selves, our identity, our soul, you know, our livelihood, right? And ultimately, I think it's important to be aware before you actually act upon anything. So I think the awareness should help, you know, stimulate and birth that self-awakening, you know? Because you're right, you just don't want to digest any information that's given to you, right? You want to make sure that it's something that's going to, you know, nurture an awakening process.
The reason why I say the difference between the awakening process and the self-awareness process being two different things is the awakening process has got to do with being aware of what's going on in the world globally regarding, you know, everything. I mean, literally everything that's going on. But, and there's a lot of people who are awake, self-awake as to what's going on. But the self-awareness is knowing who you are as a spiritual being, experiencing life in physical form, and your energy and your vibration, and how energy can affect you. And that's the next step after the self-awakening, because you have the people who are asleep, and the sheeple, as we might call them, who don't know what's going on. And then you have the self-awakening, which is when they realize what's going on. And then you have the self-awareness, is to realize who they are in the scheme of things, and the whole spiritual side. So they're the kind of processes I personally think, in my own opinion, we have to go through.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I definitely think there's like a microcosmic, macrocosmic, you know, relation with the way things unfold, especially something of this regard. Yeah, it's a very interesting process as to how it integrates into one's life and in the world in general. The way I look at it, it's like, you got to look at it like you have polluted water, you know, very dark, very murky, and that would be basically our evolution understanding as to who we are, who we're becoming, right? You know, we've made mistakes, there's wars, there's, you know, dangers, there's just a bunch of negative aspects to living, and then there's a lot of the, you know, the heroes, so to speak, of the world. And I think in bringing this type of information, it dissipates the murkiness, you know, the dense murkiness of our evolving understanding of who we are, you know? And I think that's where I bring like an interesting scope onto this topic, because I have accessed, you know, like I've successfully opened up my third eye. I've had psychic experiences myself. I've had miracles happen. People have been around, I've had a lot of these things happen on that metaphysical world that has confirmed not only that that reality is real and accessible and anybody can do it, but that there is a connection with this New Age concept. And I know how that sounds, with what I say at that, but I've had experiences that does connect with the concept of an age shift, a New Age. And
maybe we need to change the name. Now, you have a book out on Amazon, and it's called Things Magical Once Hidden Revealed, My Personal Awakening of Magic Mysticism and Miracles During a Time in Transition. Now, obviously, you felt inspired to write the book based on your experiences, and you said just there that you've opened your third eye. How did you manage to do that, and what would you advise people to do if they're on a spiritual journey? What do they need to do?
First off, there's discipline. It's effort. When it comes down to anything, it's like any art. It's like, the more you do it, the more it will start approaching you, It's the law of levels. Absolutely, the law of levels. At least in my experience. Some people may have it automatically because they were just born psychic, and I've definitely come across those people. But when it comes to someone who, like you and I, who started fresh, like no powers or anything like that, how to access that stuff. What helped me was basically I was reading books on the subject, and one book that was key in helping ground this type of experience and information, not thinking I'm all like weird, like some oddball, was like a book by Paramahansa Yogananda, Autobiography of a Yogi. Are you guys familiar with that book?
I've heard of it.
It's one of my favorite spiritual books. A lot of its mystical, magical stuff happens in there. And, there's been fake ones, you could say Sidhus or yogis from the East or India, but there's been some real ones. He's one of the real ones. A student from America wrote a book on their experiences when he came over here to teach about all the magic stuff that he was doing. His brother wrote about a book when he was young, all the crazy miracles that he was doing and all that stuff, and, of course, his own self-autobiography of a yogi. But yes, basically, that helps stimulate those energies. It's kind of like channels of water. If you create the grooves, the waters will flow more naturally towards the direction where you want them to go, right?
Okay.
But if you don't have the information, it's like water's kind of going all over the place. It doesn't know what to attach to. It's basically following the grooves of what it knows, or just like basically our minds will go through what it understands. So the thing is that it helps to understand what happens in that world. So books like Autobiography of the Yogi, or maybe some books on some of these psychics, how they have these visions of, people like, falling into a river and, they find the body, or something of that nature, right?
Well, funny you should say that, because today, when I woke up, I was watching a bit of TV, a rare thing for me, but watching TV, I kind of flick around and look for things of interest, and they actually had an American version of the psychic detective. And the police were using the psychic detectives to solve murder cases which they couldn't solve themselves.
Yes.
Which I find quite interesting. Obviously, being, myself and Steve are spiritual in our own way. We've talked about this on the show before. But these people that you've said, like yogis that have abilities or powers or things they're doing, can you give us an example of the feats that they're doing using this meditation and skills they've developed?
Absolutely. I'm not familiar much with your audience, but if they are spiritually inclined, I would not doubt, they've come across Paramahansa Yogananda in their studies. Yes, absolutely. And I could also validate some of the things that he covers. I mean, some of these things are highly advanced, extreme stuff, which I can understand people at a glance are going to be like, yeah, whatever, But the more you study it, the more you start experiencing the stuff inside. You're like, oh my God, maybe they're right. Maybe that stuff is real, the more advanced stuff, right? Well, he talks about things like from, levitation, like this one yogi who has, two bodies, who's able to project his physical form into other places, like by location, his psychic abilities, his ability, it's all the magic you read in storybooks is in that book, and it's based as an actual event, And with some of the more advanced stuff that he covers is he refers to a yogi referred to as Babaji. And according to this book, he has like powers that are quite incomprehensible to a practical human individual. Meaning that this guy could bilocate, he can manifest things at will, and he can, like even in the book, he refers to this one phase where I think Babaji states that he's going to remain in physical form until a given cycle is, preceded. So there's a lot of this advanced, fancy stuff that's going on. One thing that has been recorded in regards to some of these mystical abilities, you might have heard of such a thing known as the rainbow body. Have you ever heard of the rainbow body in Tibet?
I've heard, once or twice I've heard about it, but I don't know much about it.
It's very interesting. It's basically a practice that a certain sect of Buddhist, Indian Buddhists do. Himalayan Buddhists. Himalayan Buddhists do to achieve what's known as the rainbow body, where literally their body will shrink when they die, right? And a corpse will not shrink. It just pretty much remains the size it's supposed to be, right? Or it was in existence. So the thing is that when this body dies, it will shrink down to say like 2 feet, just small sizes. It's been witnessed and recorded from my studies, from the Chinese government. They've seen these bodies completely disappear and transfigure into light. Where rainbows are detected, leaving the body and stuff like that. So there's a lot of fancy stuff. If you want to go into what the Chinese have studied in this regard, there's a book known as China's Super Psychics, which it talks about how the Chinese government has studied these children for like the past 80 years that have had incredible abilities, like psychic abilities, where they're able to even like reputable magazines like Omni magazine has gone to them. They've studied these kids, and they're like, okay, well, they get like, for instance, they have a bunch of books. Omni takes their own books, and they give it to the kid. They're like, oh, no, they'll be like, okay, read a sentence, and then they end up reading like an entire page. There's other powers where like these kids are able to actually write psychically on a blank sheet of paper without ever touching it, opening up rosebuds and giving rosebuds to a crowd. A little Asian child will wave her hand, and then after all these rosebuds open,
are these like crystal children? Yes. So these are crystal children, because I did see a video, and the guy was filmed on video of this Chinese chap who could actually use the chi energy to set paper on fire.
Oh yes,
right. And of course we talk about the indigo children and the crystal children.
Yes, absolutely. Another guy, there's a you can check out some interesting things on YouTube that covers this as well. One guy actually came out on over here. We have a show called Ripley's Believe It or Not. I'm California, by the way, for the audience.
Yeah, we know the TV show. Yeah.
Okay, buddy. So the thing is that they have we have a show out here called Ripley's Believe It or Not. They show a lot of fancy things that people could do, right? And one of them, they show this one energy healer who he simply goes to, like, I think Joe, Master Joe or something like that. And they show with the thermal camera, he'll dampen a cloth, put some aluminum foil, I guess, to help with the heat, and you'll see him emanating his energy. And not only will you see steam rising from this cloth, but you also see the temperature increasing in the thermal camera. And he was able to get it to like 212, which is basically boiling point, correct? And yeah, that's not the only video, but the evidence is out there to say, yes, there is an energy known as chi that we can access, and definitely it's been known to heal. That's what they use to heal bodies and stuff like that. And it's real. With the right study, you could definitely find out this stuff. And I've actually had experiences myself. I've had healings done. I've done healings. I know how this sounds. Ask the psychics. It's very real. And anybody could do it. That's the wonderful thing about this universe, this energy,
Okay, so there's people out there who probably want to get involved, not so much for the healing. We know there's Reiki healers out there, and people do get involved in healing, and we have more ability than we all know. And this information has been taken away from us purposely. The knowledge has been taken away because they want to keep us down. Where do you think we are at now with what's happening globally with the energy? Because people are talking about the energy coming from the center of the galaxy hitting the planet, and the human frequency going up in frequency, and a lot of people developing certain abilities. because of this energy. I mean, do you believe that's happening at the moment? Have you seen that yourself?
I have not seen that myself, but I'm not close to that idea, and I'm actually, there is evidence out there that does seem to suggest that, absolutely, well, science has proven that there is an energy out there that some have said that is emitted from the center of the galaxy. I remember when I first read about this was like in 1994 or 7, and I first learned about it. It was referred to as like the photon band. That's how I knew about it. That our solar system is going into this thing known as the photon band, which is basically higher charged energy particles, right? And so the thing is that I even came across a psychic. I was like, "Is that real?" In my young skeptical mind, and he's like, "Well, yeah, I'm gonna have to say yeah," And so a good person to refer to the information in this regard, I believe, and I know you guys have interviewed him, and I'm a fan of his work. David Wilcock. You guys have interviewed him, correct?
Yeah, David has been on the show. Yeah.
Yeah, he has some utterly fascinating information when it comes to the scientific, aspect of what is occurring spiritually, And he does speak of this energy, and he does bring a lot of the good evidence that certain scientists have studied, that there does seem to be pulsations that do escape center of galaxies, and this has been recorded over many galaxies. And he's I guess other scientists have detected that, certain energy particles are approaching, our solar system. Also through David Wilcock, he covers how, our solar system is going through, global warming. There's a lot of changes going on in the planet. And I know he's helped facilitate this information, first initially studied from the Russians, and, ultimately he worked with, I believe, Richard Hoagland, and they brought this information more towards NASA. I don't know what they did with it, but there was a lot of good evidence saying that, yeah, there is some energy that's influxing our galaxy. And could it be stimulating evolution? It's quite possible, quite very real, because if you study DNA, it can work as a template where it is altered by its environment. Just like you see these lizards that are, you put them in a new environment and their legs are growing longer to, escape their predators, and things of that nature. Once again, I have to give thanks to David Wilcock for that study. He does speak about how there's this one thing he talks about with how certain Chinese scientists have focused a beam of energy through one egg, like a hen egg, and enter like a chicken egg, and then you get a hybrid of the two, when it hatches, meaning that the DNA was excited, carried along through this energy, and therefore you have this hybridization of both a hen and a chicken.
That's right. I've heard this experiment where they had a frog and a salamander, and they used the same energy apparently that was hitting the planet, and without the actual two animals touching each other, they transferred the DNA from one to the other.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And the whole idea of this energy that's hitting the planet is the fact that we are getting a DNA upgrade to ourselves. Humanity is getting a DNA upgrade to ourselves, and that's why more and more people are getting more abilities, so to speak. Oh
yeah, yes, absolutely. I mean, if we look at our history, we look at the evolution of, from Neanderthals to, say people like the Egyptians, and then us. There are definite physical changes. The body of an Egyptian back during their period is more identical to, it would look more like a Neanderthal body DNA than it would our present human DNA. So it's there does seem to be some increase in, changes on a molecular level, DNA level, and also on a mental level. If we look at technology, that is an aspect of the mind, the evolution of our own mind. We are advancing technologically, industrially, and these are basically all things that are first happening in our minds. So there are definite changes going on that are refining our perception of reality, And I think an interesting thing to look into when it comes to our evolving potential, this might sound new to some people, but the concept of other alien civilizations, correct? If these UFOs are true, or they're able to seem to, with a blink of an eye, be from one end of the sky to the next, popping in and out of dimensions, then that kind of activates our own psyche that, hey, there's a lot more, we're children, in the respect of time and potential, I think, what we have achieved thus far. And how far does our history go back? It goes to the cradle of civilization, 6,000 years. That is really nothing considering the spans of time, the eons of time, that has existed for the cosmos.
I think they've blown that time out of the water. I think we go back way, way, way millions rather than thousands.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, I think they've definitely confirmed that. Steve, you have a question for Joe there?
Yeah. Well, just when we're talking about how old the Earth is in time and all that, I mean, I seen something there only recently on the internet. Again, I don't believe everything I see or read or hear on the internet, but there was a what looked like a hammer, and they were saying that this hammer was found, and they obviously done the carbon dating on this hammer. It was found in some archaeological dig a long time ago, and seemingly they said it was made of two metals that couldn't have came together by accident. They had to be made. They didn't say man-made, but they said it had to be made, and they were dating it at something like 300 million years ago.
Oh my God!
And just sometimes I wonder, Joe, that when we think that we're evolving and we're getting better and we're getting smarter and we're making all these technological advances day by day, by year by year, I'm just wondering, are we really advancing, or are we just relearning stuff that we already knew? And will it come to a point when we will reach a point and it's like somebody will press a reset button and everything goes back to Neanderthal man again?
Well, that's a very good question when it comes to evolution, our spirituality, where we're going, and yeah, that's a genuine question when it comes to the subject. One thing that I like to refer to is, are you guys familiar with the Yugas of India? The ages of India?
Not really, no.
Okay, they have we know that, various cultures have studied, they have their belief in ages, right? You have the astrological ages, you have, with India, you have the Yugas, which they refer to as ages. You have the Bronze Age, Golden Age, you have, what else you have? You have, the Mayans' concept of ages, the fifth world, the Hopi Indians, all this stuff with prophecy. I think the Indians have a very interesting take on it because they do refer to cycles of time. And I believe that David Wilcock also talks on the subject as well in his second book, The Synchronicity Key, that things do happen in cycles. And with these cycles, what happens is that there's basically an ascending arc and a descending arc of evolution. So, according to the Indian Yugas, we are exiting Kali Yuga, which is considered the darkest of the worlds, and, where it's basically greed, selfishness, blah, 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 which we see in the world. And then after the next, which is Dwapara Yuga, is more related towards spiritual virtues, where, there's more a feeling of connectedness with the Creator, a need for compassion, a need for, sustainability and, self-sustainability, which does integrate the spiritual aspect. And it continues with yugas. There's 4 altogether, and ultimately there's what they refer to as Satya Yuga, which is the highest, which is when we all have our abilities again. There's war still on the planet, but not much. And, take that for what you will, because, it's such a broad, spectrum to look into. But it shows that there has been cycles. And this is a good point, because if these cycles do exist, is there any evidence of a previous golden age, right? So that's one thing. That metal shows that, hey, maybe there was a Satya Yuga in the past, right? You also have objects throughout history that are just beyond our understanding as to how we think primitive man could have achieved some of these, monuments. A good example would be the in Baalbek, I believe they call it the Trilithon, which are giant, massive stones. If you place a human by it, he's just dwarfed, and they have these 3 stones put together, and it's like, how'd they do that? They didn't. Not even the cranes today could have left that.
David Icke said that. He said these stones, some of them are 400 ton in size, and you cannot fit a fag paper between the two of them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And of course, you look at the ability to raise these stones, and people talk about using vibration. to, whatever vibration or the mnemonics, they use the frequency to resonate the actual item so it lifts up and they can move it into place. I mean, Dave Icke has said it in his books, if you read his books, that we've had advanced technology. We were very, very advanced, and somewhere along the line the reset button was pressed and then we start again.
Yes. I would not doubt, I would have to bring in also like the alien concept. I know how that sounds to some of your audience. But there seems to be more evidence coming out on that. A good person to go to in regards to the whole UFO concept would be Stephen Greer. He's gotten like over 400 government officials, both retired and still present, active, that have gone on the record saying, hey, we want to bring this to Congress, And there's a good video out there, I think it's called 2009 Disclosure with Stephen Greer, and you see all these government officials, giving their truth, their experiences, how they've seen the bodies, they've gone to the crash sites, they've seen the bodies, One interesting individual on that panel speaks how there was multiple race of beings, and he said that they've cataloged more than 50, and he said that some look very human, So the thing is that no doubt there has, in our past, we hear of, things like in India, they refer to the Vimanas, or they used to refer to these flying crafts that were made of steel, and this was way back during like Krishna days, just another age, another time.
That's it.
So the thing is that I wouldn't doubt that they have visited, and have definitely helped out. Like, think about the Egyptian pyramids, for instance, or like what's been referred to as a Piri-Reis map, where they mapped out America before it was even discovered, and it was quite a technical map. On surface, they described this map as if you were to see it like on a flat surface, it wouldn't make any sense. But when you wrap this map around a globe, a sphere, then it begins to make sense. It aligns towards the American continent, and also the Arctic was also mapped out. The weird thing about the Arctic is that it's covered in snow, but yet they have the physical body of the continent hanging out right there in the map. It's like, and they were saying that the last time that the Arctic was on ice was like millions of years ago, So it's like, okay, then how'd they know that? It's like, and Piri-Reis said that it was, he drew this map with reference maps. So he got a bunch of maps and he put it together. So clearly there were, there were people sailing seas, maybe even having sky views, maybe UFO, who knows what.
Well, the sky views, I was just going to say, if you look at the Nazca lines, I mean, we didn't spot them until man invented flight, and then we seen the lines. But, how would you do that unless you were up in the sky, coordinating the design?
Yes, I would not doubt that at all. I mean, you have like the Egyptian pyramid that's aligned to true north, You just have a lot of strange, anomalous, intelligent anomalies in the Egyptian pyramid alone. And interesting, I think that the pyramid, there's a mystique about that pyramid that I think people, generated interest in. There's this one documentary that I saw that, I don't know, might help into saying who kind of helped build it. There's a documentary called The Visitor, KGB Files or something like that, where it talks about how after World War II, I guess the Russian government, wanted to learn more about what was going on in Egypt because of the pyramid. They end up finding out that there was a tomb of the visitor, which was like an alien being and all that stuff. It's pretty interesting. And it kind of connects, well, maybe this was how they got that information as to how they were able to build this monument, Another weird thing on this subject in regards to previous ages, you hear of Edgar Cayce. Are you guys familiar with Edgar Cayce?
Edgar Cayce, yeah.
Yes, Edgar Cayce refers to a time where there was a place called Atlantis, right?
Yeah.
A previous advanced civilization. He placed this location, I believe, in the middle of the Pacific. And in that map, that Piri-Reis map, he, I can't recall, I don't want to give misinformation on that, but it's somewhere in the ocean, but you will see that there is another body of land in that Piri-Reis map that isn't there now. Yet everything else matches, It's like, well, could that have been Atlantis. That's just another theory, right?
Yeah.
But he does refer to this information. But he said that there's this big old cataclysm that happened, and what ended up happening was that the information was saved, and that he said that they took it to different parts of the world. One where the Yucatan Mayans exist, where they have the pyramids there, and then one of the other places was where Egypt now sits, right? And there's a lot of weird connection with the Mayan pyramid and the Egyptian pyramid. I mean, they both have the same base dimension for one.
What about them? What about the likes of Planet X and Nibiru, I should say? What's your take on that, on what's happening now with the global changes with weather and everything else? What do you think is going on there? I mean, do you believe there is a planet? I mean, we know Sky TV announced last week that they found a ninth planet, conveniently enough.
Yes, you're right. That is yes, I heard about that. And continue with the question.
So, do you believe that the ninth planet is actually a Nibiru or Planet X coming in on an elliptical orbit, and this happens every 3,600 years?
I wouldn't be quick to jump and say it is, because if it's not, then there went that, I mean, I always hold a healthy reserve when it comes to this type of information. Although it's like, okay, I have heard of Nibiru. It did stem from an author known as Zecharia Sitchin. Are you guys much familiar with him?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with his work, but I know him. Yeah.
Okay, he is a fascinating individual when it comes to this concept of a returning planet, and also how, well, with the assistance of our evolution, right, and the cycles, he's the one who helped bring in the whole Anunnaki thing, the reptilians, which David Icke does talk about, and he brings some very interesting evidence to the table. He wrote, I believe, in him being able to translate, I guess, Sumerian text, he discovered that, this is how he started discovering that there was a planet that does like an 8 formation. It exits the orbit of our sun for a little while, and then after it returns back to orbit in our sun, and that's where we get that, the returning of Nibiru.
Yeah.
And according to him, this planet is where the Anunnaki reside, and this is when they're supposed to return, according to the Sumerian text that he says he's translated.
And in the Bible, it mentions wormwood as well.
Oh, yes. One thing that's interesting about him is that he does write things before they were even discovered by NASA. Like, I think he discovered, certain colors, like planet of Neptune, he wrote it down before it was, just various odd things he wrote before it became mainstream. So could there have actually been truth to what he was saying, So, I mean, if he got some of those things right, could he be right about other things, So when it comes to the Nibiru concept, and what is your interest in its return, about the alien concept, or just validating?
Well, everything. I mean, even tonight, I was watching a video it was posted up on Facebook, of a chap that lived in Spain, and he was on the beach, and he said he's seen loads of these videos on YouTube about Planet X and Nibiru. And he said he wasn't too keen on believing them because of CGI and all that kind of stuff. But he said, I'm shooting, he said, I've noticed this now. And he put up the image, the video of him, of seeing something moving, right? Which he said, obviously, it looks like it's Nibiru. And then what he did is he showed the raw data of the video file on the video to say, well, look, here's the raw data of the video file. And I put this up 51 minutes ago from after shooting it. So he said, because he wasn't convinced with the other images, because people can fake it and wind you up and all that kind of stuff. Yep. So what he was saying is, now I've seen it myself, he said, that's good enough for me. And I think myself and Steve would probably be the same way. Steve, I think we'd have to kind of see it yourselves before we kind of, although there's loads of video footage out there, what do you think?
Well, again, yeah, exactly. I'm the same. I will entertain it. I'll entertain the thought, and it's a possibility. But if I can see it with my own eyes, then all the better. Joe, I just have a quick question for you. You were talking about kind of psychic ability there earlier on, and around that time when you started to come on, one of our guests, one of our listeners, John signed off. Now John would be kind of, he approached everything from how would you say, he's very, I'd say he probably studies the Bible.
Yes.
And any time anyone comes on and they start talking about something that maybe, talking about psychic ability or something, John always kind of, he pulls out the Bible and he slams it down and he says, no, anyone who's dealing in this, the word of the Bible is true. Anyone who deals in this psychic stuff, it's the work of the devil and the demonic entities. And he actually logged off. Now, I'm guessing, John, he may check out the podcast. But what would you say to people? I mean, could you offer any solutions or any proof to someone like John?
Yes. It's funny because I'm very familiar with that. I get that myself. I mean, I believe that there was a Christ that walked the earth, But there's good evidence in that you have a Russian aristocrat that, goes to Tibet and he starts learning Tibetan text and, he comes across this documentation that there was a being that referred to, I think it was referred to as Isha. I don't recall the exact name right now, but it pretty much fit the description of a Jesus, And then in the Bible, you do have his missing years, the missing years of Jesus, right, when he was in his teenage years.
Yeah.
And some say that he went to India, did the studies and the practices, and that's how he was able to, master his miracles. But yes, that's a very, very good point, because here you are trying to help out, our fellow Christians, right? And at the same time not bring them these. I understand where they're coming from, but you got to understand that even the Bible refers to these powers that you can do them yourself. Jesus said it himself. Everything I have done, you could do yourself. So even if Jesus did come and he's doing these miracles, he read minds, he saw Judas was going to betray him. Are they going to run from that? You know what I mean? You also have a verse inside the Bible that says, the children will be I'm paraphrasing. I'm not giving the exact verbatim verse, but he says that your kids will be having visions and elders will be having dreams or something like that. There's also a part of the Bible that states that it does recommend you use your spiritual powers, and they say the best one is to speak in tongues. So, if you think from a modern standpoint, what are they referring to? Are they referring to channeling the voice of God, things like Edgar Cayce did, right? Well, since I've had personal experience in that world, I can understand, and they're very hard lodged into the belief system of what the Bible states, and teaches. So I understand that. I understand the reserve and why they're reserved. It's not something I condemn or, I'm upset about. It's just their, what they're familiar with when it comes to the realms of the spiritual.
Yeah. We've come across it with people, and that's their belief. That's their belief at the moment, and maybe that will change. But at the moment, that's what they believe. So, that's all you can do. But Joe, we've reached that time, and we're going to have to let you go. But a big thank you for coming on the show and telling us about your book and telling us about your belief and your background and what you've been involved in. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get all your details where people can find out more about yourself and your book, and if they want to contact you. Steve.
Oh, that is wonderful. I had a wonderful time, by the way.
Cheers.
Yeah, no, we always like to hear someone had a wonderful time. That's great. Well, we hope maybe at some later date, Joe, you may join us again and have another wonderful time. But in the meantime, anyone who wants to find out more about you or the book or anything else that you may be doing at the moment, do you have a website that you want to throw at us there?
Yeah, I'm actually a new author, so I still haven't, set up the website. But I do have. They can check out some YouTube videos that I have uploaded, and I do have a book out on Amazon, the website Amazon. And the book is titled "Things Magical Once Hidden Revealed" by Joe Puente, and that basically covers the magical aspects. Someone who's actually walked that spiritual path and the magic that happens in that world, and also the research of the ages and the scientific data that could go with backing up these spiritual abilities, the spiritual dimension. But I think what could help them out in learning more about me and not jumping so much into a book, they could definitely refer to my videos. One is entitled David Icke 2015 update. What is it? Oh yeah, Reptilians and Other Strange Facts. Another one is if you go to my channel, once you type into that video, you can go into my YouTube channel, which is Revealed 33, And you'll see another video of mine that covers the prophecies that I bring out and just the fascinating correlations that they have together and how my book, is related to that. So that could get them started as to learning more about me. And definitely leave comments, on YouTube, and I will definitely read them. There's a lot of people who aren't familiar with this, so there's a lot of I guess hard to believe, so to speak, individuals. But it's real. I could definitely validate for it. One thing I can say in my experience is I prove many times in the book that psychics are real. I've done it myself, and I've come across many. That if you find this stuff hard to believe, check out some of the skeptics. Go to a qualified psychic, verify my experience through them, and if that's for you, then cool.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We've actually had psychics on the show and mediums on the show, so we've explained the kind of process through there. Well, Joe, thanks a lot for coming on. A big thank you. Just stay with us there for a minute, and we're just going to go off to a musical break. We'll be back on.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Okay, we're back. Joe Puente. Check out his book there. It is available on Amazon. I'm going to stick the link up again in the chat rooms there for anyone who may be interested. And we're just going to have to. We did have to do your week, didn't we? So how was your week?
How was my week? Yeah, just catching up on my week. Now I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who have seen the X-Files Series 10 Episode 1 Struggle, where it's coming back on after a big gap of 15 years or something gap, or 13 years gap. And what can I say? I mean, the first series, they basically tell us everything that they're going to do. How that script got through, Chris Carter actually did the script. They obviously let him do it. Gave him the information, or maybe he knew the information, but that had to be approved somewhere along the line. I mean, if you haven't seen it, you want to go and see X-Files Series 1 on Episode 1, Series 10, I should say. Unbelievable information. I know you haven't seen it yet, Steve, but
no.
You definitely have to go and see it, because they go through everything from chemtrails to the banking system to the food to the drugs to just literally everything. They talk about everything.
And is this, as I mentioned before we actually went on live, I've never seen the X-Files at all. I know the program existed. Is it the same program, or is this like a new one?
Well, this is a new series they're starting up. The X-Files was on in the 90s, and then they stopped around, I think, 2002 or something like that. And the best group were Mulder and Scully and Skinner. They were the best three.
Right.
And I think people were asking for them to come back, because when Mulder left, David Duchovny left the show, and they brought in the other guy who was in the Terminator movie. I kind of switched off after that. I didn't bother watching, and it just went all a bit funny. But now, obviously, the demand was for them to come back. But again, there's a lot of talk out there about disclosure, and about the soft disclosure, and letting people know what's going on. And they feel that the X-Files is one of the ways they're actually using the soft disclosure to say what's going on. And they came out and said everything. Now, there is something going around the internet saying, oh, by the way, within 2 days of the X-Files coming out, the CIA have released a lot of information. Well, apparently, there's other people saying that information had already been out there. It was already available. So, I don't know what's happened there and why that happened, but if the CIA are releasing information, or have released information on their website anyway about stuff that happened, then you have to ask yourself, there's something going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously a soft disclosure. You're not gonna get Obama coming out and talking to people and saying, by the way, there's ETs and there's aliens and, there's life on other planets. We're not going to see that happening. But the soft disclosure will be using the medium of Hollywood and movies and stuff like
honestly that. Though, we were talking about Stephen Greer there earlier, and Stephen Greer was supposed to be doing the Disclosure Project, and then kind of Stephen Greer disappeared off the scene for a while. But I honestly don't believe that in our lifetime, I'm sad to say this, but I don't believe in our lifetime that we will see full disclosure. And the only reason I say that is because of something that I said earlier. When you're talking to people in your workplace, who are old enough to know better, and they're still stuck in the matrix. They're still stuck in their own belief system.
Yeah.
So as long as you have people stuck in that belief system. I think no matter how much proof you offer them in relation to ETs or psychic ability, etc., you know, you're wasting your time, I think.
Some people will never get it. Some people are just stuck in their belief system, and that's it. And they won't take the time to go and do the research, but they'll slag everybody else off or just be ignorant and not know the information. That's just the way it is. And maybe maybe the planet has to reach a level of consciousness before things change. Maybe that's the thing. The other thing that's on the list, I don't know whether you've seen it, it's quite heartbreaking to see, but I've seen photos during the week of a homeless person who was in a wheelchair on Facebook, and then a blind person with a blind dog as homeless. You know, she was homeless.
A blind person with a blind dog?
A blind person with a guide dog.
I'm sorry, that just sounded funny. Yeah. I thought you were going doing a bit of a skit there or something.
A blind person with a guide dog. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And
no, I didn't see that, but I did see the picture of the chap sleeping homeless in the sleeping bag with his wheelchair beside him.
I mean, that's really the state of the country where it is. And of course, Enda Kenny's turning around and saying that they're on a recovery. Now, it was said in the IrishIndependent.ie website that Alan Kelly is quoted as saying, "Power is a drug, it suits me." He said, Labour's Alan Kelly says he is his own boss and speaks about his ruthless ambition to get to the top. And that's why I keep saying, politics is like the corporate world. I met these people when I worked in the corporate world. They don't give a damn about nobody. These are psychopaths. And they will stab you in the back and not think twice about it to get to where they want to go, which is the top of the tree. And they'll do anything to stay in power. They really will, because it's an aphrodisiac, it's that control, that it's unbelievable. And Alan Kelly, amongst them all, are all the same. So they will do anything to stay in power. And apparently, I don't know what you're saying during the week, you were saying that there's people on the electoral register which shouldn't be on there. So I don't know what's going on.
Probably a lot of dead people on it, is there?
There probably is. There probably is. So I don't know what's going on there, but it's just unbelievable what's going on. And again, the Boyers shop, 83 employees have lost their jobs in Boyers, but you know, this is supposed to be the recovery that we're on. So I don't know. I mean, I know there's a lot of positive stuff going on. There is a lot of positive things going on as well. So it's not all negative, but I don't know where we have a seesaw, and the seesaw is going up and down at the moment, and I don't know where we're at. We're on the cusp of maybe major changes taking place, but the good news is that article that Steve read out with Guy Taylor, saying about the private prosecutions being taken by the 7 police officers, because the whole idea of, well, I'm only doing my job, it doesn't cut it anymore. They shouldn't be involved with evictions, and they shouldn't be involved with bailiffs. Fair play to Guy and the chap who's involved in that. I'm just going to look for the article again, because it's good information. Now, as we say, it's posted up. His name's Russ McGarry, and it's posted up on our Facebook page with the video as well. And the video is quite disturbing, seeing the bailiffs going in and just not giving a damn, and the police not helping either. But this is brilliant. And if we can bring this over here, and I've said this before on the show, about what we need to do is bring private prosecutions against the Gardaí who are misbehaving. You know, if they're going to attend evictions, they have to be warned that if they're going to be there and they're not going to help out the bailiffs, if they do help them out, that there's a private prosecution coming their way. And I think that would kind of, you know, this will be a good case to set a precedent and see what happens with this. So we have to keep an eye on what's going on with this. Right, okay, next week. Next week our guests are Paddy Broussard and Karen MacDonald. Now, we had Paddy on the show before, and we had Karen on the show before. And Paddy had so much information, blow your mind, and people said, oh, I have to listen to it 2 or 3 times. So we're going to try and do our best to have the information, because Paddy's an ex-NASA whistleblower. We're going to do our best to try and organise it as much as we can in a way that's, you know, digestible. Because we did kind of move around everywhere the last time with the interview, and there was loads of information. So we're going to try and do our best to control that as much as we can. So that's the plan of attack. So that's it. Who's on with Vin later on, Steve?
Vin actually is quite interesting in a subject. He's going to be discussing the flat Earth. So anyone who's interested in the flat Earth, Vin's going to be doing that at 9 o'clock as soon as we clear. Vin's going to be taking up the stream, and he's going to be discussing that one. So anyone who has an interest in the flat earth versus the ball earth, I suggest if you're on our link, the OYM link, just switch over to PIR. If you're already listening on the PIR, then stay right there. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to be rushing home to try and tune into that one as well. And if I can, if not, I'll just catch it on the podcast. But that's going to be an interesting one anyway.
Brilliant. Okay, so for myself, have a good week, have a safe week, take it easy. If you have any links, send them in to us. If you have any, if you can donate to us, that'd be fantastic. It's a big help. It keeps the wheels in motion at OYM, and we have T-shirts and CDs available as well if you're interested. For myself, Alan James, take it easy, and we'll catch you next week. Bye bye.
Okay, so you're selling CDs now. It's Alan sings Val Doonican songs. The best of Val.
The best of
Al and Val. Actually, yeah, you could do that.
No,
okay.
not
right,
recommended.
Right, okay. Stay tuned anyway if you're sticking around for the Flat Earth discussion on People's Internet Radio. We'll do it all again in a week's time. And thanks for being here, for contributing to everyone who was in our chat room and also on PIR chat as well. So we'll catch you later. Bye bye.